I was 19, the winter I started working the overnight shift at a gas station off the highway. It was one of those tiny, lonely stations that look like they shouldn't still be open. One flickering fluorescent sign, a single row of pumps, and a small store that smelled like coffee, burnt plastic, and cold air every time the door opened. It wasn't a bad job, just quiet. The kind of quiet that gets into your head. Between midnight and 6 in the morning, it felt like the world outside had gone into hibernation. The only sounds came from the highway a quarter-mile away, trucks rumbling past like distant thunder, and the constant hum of the refrigerators behind me. That sound never stopped. It filled the space so completely that you stopped noticing it until it cut off for a few seconds, and then the silence felt wrong. I used to keep the radio low just to have something human in the background. The back of the building opened into a narrow lot with 2 large green dumpsters pushed against a chain-link fence. Behind that fence was an empty lot where an old tire shop used to be before it burned down years ago. The lot was overgrown and dark. The only light came from a flickering pole lamp that barely reached halfway to the fence. Beyond that, everything dissolved into shadow. Most nights, I didn't even think about it. You don't, until something gives you a reason to. It happened near the end of January, when the cold was so sharp it felt like glass in your lungs. I remember that night clearly because I was running behind on chores. Around 2:30, I grabbed 2 bags of trash and pushed through the back door into the frozen air. My breath came out in thick white clouds, and the sound of the door slamming echoed off the fence. That's when I noticed someone standing near the far dumpster. He was facing the fence, motionless. His back was toward me. At first, I assumed it was a homeless guy, maybe looking for cans or just trying to find shelter from the wind. We got a few every winter. But something about how still he was made me stop in my tracks. He wasn't digging through the trash, wasn't moving at all. Just standing, his head slightly bowed, hands at his sides. I stood there holding the trash bags, waiting for him to react to my presence, to flinch, to shift, to acknowledge that he'd heard the door slam. He didn't. The only sound was the buzz of that light above me, flickering just enough to make the shadows twitch on the fence. The longer I looked at him, the more I started to feel wrong, like I shouldn't be watching him, like I had interrupted something I couldn't see. I dropped the bags into the nearest dumpster and backed toward the door without turning around. My boots crunched in the snow, and for a second, I thought I heard another set of footsteps behind me. When I turned, he hadn't moved. I went back inside and locked the door, telling myself it was just some guy passing through. I could check the cameras and see for sure. The feed from the back camera was grainy and green, but there he was. Same position, same stance, just standing there. I watched for 10 minutes. He never moved an inch. There's something deeply unsettling about stillness when it lasts too long. Even sleeping people shift or breathe. He didn't. When I checked again, he was gone. Not walking away, not fading out of view, just gone. One frame he was there, the next he wasn't. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for him to come back into view. But the fence line stayed empty. I felt this strange pressure in my chest, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing it. The rest of the shift crawled by. Every sound, the pop of the heater, the hum of the lights, even my own footsteps, felt louder. Around 4, a police cruiser pulled into the lot. The trooper came in for coffee, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. He mentioned they were checking for a man walking along the highway. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to sound crazy. When I finally clocked out that morning, I couldn't shake the image from my head. The way the man stood, so unnaturally still, and the way he disappeared like he'd never been there at all. The next night, I came in early. My manager was talking to a pair of local cops. They looked serious. Apparently, a body had been found half a mile up the road, frozen solid, barefoot, no ID. The kicker? The timestamp on the trucker's dashcam showed the man walking past my gas station 2 hours before I saw him standing out back. Meaning, whoever I saw wasn't alive when I saw him. That thought messed with me more than I care to admit. For days, I avoided looking at the cameras. But curiosity is a cruel thing. About a week later, I checked the footage again, the segment from that night, just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. The image was clearer than I remembered. The man was definitely there, standing perfectly still for nearly 12 minutes, not once adjusting his footing, not even when the wind kicked snow across the ground. I kept staring, and something small but chilling stood out. There were no footprints around him. None. The snow at his feet was undisturbed, like he'd just been placed there. Then, in one frame, he was gone. I deleted the file. I told myself it was a glitch, a corrupted video, anything but what it looked like. For a while, things went back to normal. I'd still catch myself glancing at the fence through the back window, expecting to see him. But the lot stayed empty. Then one night, a month later, it happened again. I'd gone outside to smoke. The air was still. It had that dead quality that happens just before snow starts. The pole light flickered as usual, but this time, when it steadied, I felt that same pressure in the air I'd felt the first night. Like the world was holding its breath again. I turned toward the dumpsters, and there it was. The lid on the far one, slightly open. The black plastic inside was moving, just a little, like something shifting underneath it. But there was no wind. I went back inside, locked the door, and watched the monitor. The camera flickered, static cutting through the image every few seconds. The dumpster lid was moving, not fast, just enough to draw your eye. It kept moving for 5 minutes straight. I told myself it was an animal, a raccoon maybe. But there was no shape, no movement beyond that subtle rise and fall. I couldn't bring myself to open the door again. That night, I stayed behind the counter until the sun came up. When the day shift arrived, I didn't tell them what I'd seen. I just clocked out and left, feeling that same hollow pressure in my chest. I drove home with the radio off, and every time I passed a field or a line of trees, I found myself checking for figures, silhouettes against the fence lines, motionless in the snow. I eventually quit that job. The manager sold the place a year later, and the new owners tore most of it down, leaving just the foundation and a single light post. But that lot still looks wrong when you drive by. Even now, the snow never seems to settle evenly behind that fence. Sometimes I dream about it. That stretch of asphalt, the dim glow of the pole light, the faint crunch of my boots in the snow. In the dream, I walk to the dumpster again. The air is colder than it should be. I can see my breath curling in front of me. And he's always there. Always standing by the fence. Always facing away. When I wake up, I'm freezing, even if the room is warm. And sometimes, if I wake up fast enough, I swear I can still smell the faint stench of diesel and rot, the smell of that frozen lot, that night when something stood where no one should have been. I've told myself for years it was just a trick of exhaustion, that I was overworked, underslept, seeing what I wanted to see. But there's one thing that keeps that thought from settling. Last winter, a friend sent me a link to a local news article. It was about a missing hiker found dead not far from that same highway. The report mentioned something strange. The search dogs kept circling back to a single spot behind an abandoned gas station, near 2 rusted dumpsters. The ground was frozen solid, but there were fresh footprints in the snow. And according to the article, they didn't belong to the victim. Now, whenever I drive at night and see a gas station off in the distance, half lit and alone by the road, I think about that man. I think about how he stood there in that dead silence, unmoving, facing the fence like he was waiting for something to open. And I wonder if maybe he still is, because sometimes, when I pull over on the shoulder to check my phone or catch my breath, I catch movement in the rearview mirror, just a hint of a shape standing too far from the light, perfectly still, watching from behind something that shouldn't be tall enough to hide a person. And in that frozen second before I drive off, I swear I can feel it again. That same silence pressing in, heavy, patient, cold as the night air. Waiting, always waiting.